And a shock new report by the Centre for Migration Control reveals that foreign-born nationals are disproportionately behind the country's increasing number of arrests. In 2023, there was one arrest of a British national per 94 people. However, for migrants, this rate surges to 1 in 70. The Home Office has recently been criticised for refusing to provide data on the nationalities of those arrested. Former Minister Neil O'Brien, Tory leadership contender Robert Jenrick and political commentator Professor Matthew Goodwin have all railed against this so-called data desert. Well, now we do have some figures. And what do they tell us? I'm delighted to welcome political commentator Jess Gill. Jess, really good to have you on the show for the first time. What's your reaction to these new figures?
Yeah, it's really not surprising considering whenever a crime is reported, they seemingly miss out the fact of the ethnicity of the person and seem to cover that up completely. So it really isn't surprising. But I'm really upset that it has taken an independent research body rather than the government being open about these statistics. It's ridiculous.
By using someone's migration status in relation to crime statistics, isn't that racial profiling and isn't that a problem?
I don't think it's a problem. I think it's just the truth. These are just facts. And if there's a disproportionate amount of people committing crime, I think that's just how it is. And I think people need to be aware of it. The reality is that it isn't just a certain ethnicity or a certain race. It's not racist to say so. I think it's more important that people are aware that the type of people we're bringing over aren't the best of the people in their country. And it is causing crime, which is in effect disproportionately affecting the taxpayer.
And Jess, why is migrant crime proportionally higher, do you think?
Oh, I'm not too sure on that one, in all honesty. I think it's a wave of factors. I think maybe it's the culture around it. Maybe it's the type of people we're bringing in, the fact that we're not having a good standard of the type of people we're bringing in. And so they're allowed to just take advantage of our benefit system and of our, for example, the health and social visa, and that we've had such low standards that anyone can take advantage of it.
Could it be that migrant crime is higher because migrants are treated very badly by our society?
No, I don't think so, considering the fact that everything in our media is to do with that. It is hard to say that they're treated badly when they're welcomed with open arms and given benefits and given all these perks. For example, with the visas, with the health and social visas, instead of training up British-born people to fill these roles, the government over the past decade has just imported hundreds of thousands of people.
Jess, why do you think so much of the media are reluctant to cover stories like this? And why aren't we getting this kind of data from central government?
I think because they're afraid of the truth and it really debunks their conceptions. I think the government, again, it would prove that multiculturalism has been a failure, and the fact that you can't have all these cultures come together and there won't be any problems has turned out not to be true, and that's why they don't want to face the fact, because they're not going to admit they've been wrong over the past few years.
Jess, if crime is higher among foreign-born nationals, how do we tackle the problem?
I think if crime is, well, for one, I don't think any foreign-born national should be in a UK prison. I think just deport them all, quite frankly. Why should the UK taxpayer have to pay for that? I think that's ridiculous. And just having a zero-tolerance policy towards it. In all honesty, I think we need to focus more on the actual victims here, which are the people who have been impacted by crime, by both UK and foreign-born criminals here, and I think that's the real problem. And the fact that we're just letting them off with a slap on the wrist is quite ridiculous, regardless of what skin colour it is. I think we need a colourblind system when it comes to that.
Absolutely. Jess, is there a danger of characterising all migrants as criminals rather than the positive contribution that most make?
Well, I think in the UK at the moment, migrants on average haven't been making a positive contribution in terms of taxes, in terms of the culture and in terms of crime. We've seen multiculturalism and mass immigration fail again. But I will add that it isn't all immigrants. I don't think it's good to generalise. But at the same time, we shouldn't brush over these facts just because it might hurt some people's feelings.
Indeed. Listen, you're an incredibly articulate political commentator. It's not escaped my attention that you're pretty young. Do you feel an outlier within your sort of demographic about being concerned on these issues?
I think a lot of people are trying to keep their head in the sand with these issues. I'm at King's College London, and almost half of the students, it feels like, are international students who just, isolate themselves away from the native population. And some of them don't speak that well of English, and it creates this cultural barrier. But when I bring it up to some of my classmates and friends, they just don't see it as an issue. And it's sad, because it is an issue, and I think people need to wake up. But I think they are starting to wake up, because when you go around the streets, for the past few times I've had conversations with my young female friends about catcalling and sexual harassment. It hasn't been people who have been born in the UK, and the sad reality is you can't ignore those facts.
Indeed. Catherine Burble-Singh, Britain's strictest head teacher, of course, she's responsible for the very successful school, Michaela Community School, which has an intake of BAME children. She gets them into Oxford and Cambridge. And she said that multiculturalism can work, but it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of resource. Is the genie out of the lamp now? Can we bring together our divided society, do you think?
I mean, I wouldn't like a country modelled on her type of school, considering she's the most strictest head teacher. Would you want some weird authoritarian state with that? I think if that's the price you have to pay, if you need an authoritarian state, if you need this very strict top-down policy to enforce multiculturalism, I don't think that's something we should do. I don't think that's a price we should be willing to pay for that.
Yes, briefly, Jess, do you see attitudes towards mass migration changing in the years ahead?
I think people have to face up with it. The reality is that there are places in the UK which are no-go areas, especially for the middle class who have a lot of political leverage. They aren't able to avoid this anymore. And when I've spoken to my friends and the people around me, it is an uncomfortable truth that they have to face up to. But at the end of the day, when crime increases, when our communities no longer feel like British communities, that is something we have to face up to.
Jess, it's been a real treat to have you on the show. Your first appearance, first of many, I hope. My thanks to political commentator and broadcaster Jess Gill. Your reaction at gbnews.com/your say. Can we start, David, with this rather shocking story in the Times and the Telegraph? Sir Keir Starmer breached rules over clothes that donor gave his wife. Is this a scandal that's going to grow, do you think?
Well, it's adding to the impression that already exists after a very short time that this Labour government is sleazy. Why was Lord Ali buying clothes from Sir Keir's wife? It's a rather odd thing for one man to do to another's wife if they're not having an affair, which I would hope there's no suggestion of here. And why did he have a pass for Downing Street? Very
access all areas pass.
Very few, which we understand he no longer has. Very few people ever have those. Certainly not donors usually. That was rather odd. I think there's a growing sense in Westminster that there are. The trope always used to be that when it comes to scandals, the Labour Party have money scandals because they don't have enough of it. The Tories have sex scandals because they have too much of it. And I think this is just reinforcing that old perception. And it's unfortunate, although it is exquisitely funny, because Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party is one of the most pious and one of the most morally high-grounded I can remember, at least in the way it portrays itself. And to see it fall so low so quickly is, for a Conservative, really very amusing.
Most definitely. And, of course, there have been allegations about political appointees within the civil service as well. Yes,
indeed. And again, donors having access, donors being given these positions. It all seems to point to me to a government that spent a great deal of its time in opposition telling the Tories how bad and sleazy and morally defunct they were, while at the same time copying much of that behaviour.
Well, Keir Starmer played the moral high ground when it came to Partygate and the pandemic and lots of other issues as leader of the opposition. Now he's Prime Minister. He looks to be a man in a glass house throwing stones.
He reminds me of a 1980s job centre manager.
Right.
That's the vibe.
In other words, someone that can't help you.
Yeah. Well, somebody who stands behind the glass and sort of tells you off and tells you, all the things that you can't have, and he's pious.
Yeah.
He is bureaucratic.
Yeah.
He's not warm. And I think this, imagine what people out in the country are now thinking. They're worrying about the winter, about heating, especially pensioners. They're worrying about the cost of living. And this man is having clothes bought for him, and so is his wife. The optics are terrible. How do they not know this?
There you go. Can this be defended, Sheila?
No, I don't think it can. I'm with you, Lisa. £1,000 pensioners are worse off is the other headline we've just read, right?
Yeah.
And £18,000 for ASOS clothes? I didn't know they cost that much,
Yes,
quite
indeed.
frankly. I thought you could get quite a bundle with 50 quid, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But, 18,000, come on. This is really, really bad. And also begs the question, those who fund our politicians, how much of a say are they getting in the way that the country is being run? And I've always had a problem with that. It's how much are they influencing the way the country is being run?
Well, indeed. Ali, Lord Ali, Wahid Ali, is the former chairman of ASOS. His wealth, Lisa, is estimated at £200 million. He's Starmer's biggest donor. This year, he's given the Labour leader £18,500 for work clothes and new glasses. And he spent £20,000 on accommodation for Starmer during the election. Why has Starmer let this happen?
I think he because he is so pious, he is the vicar that stands in the on the pulpit and sort of preaches down. He clearly has no self-reference. He doesn't, and he's obviously very, very disconnected to the British public. He clearly is, because in 8 to 10 weeks, he's gone from a man that won a massive majority to probably the most hated man in the country.
David, you've got a good knowledge of the inner workings of Parliament. These clothes, the clothes that Starmer was gifted, were declared, but it's understood that he omitted to submit details of a wardrobe budget for his wife. How serious could this be if it's upheld?
Well, he'll certainly come in for censure for it, because failing to declare something in the register of members' interests within the time allocated or demanded by the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority is a serious breach. I must say, having a look at the photograph on the front of the paper, I can't really see that Sir Keir's clothes are any better now than they were before. So if I were a Lord Ali, I'd want some money back. And I
think Moss Bros is good enough.
Well, it certainly is for him. I come back to this point. Why does Lady Starmer need Lord Ali to buy her clothes? Can Sir Keir not do it? Can she not do it? It seems very odd indeed.
Well, I wonder, I suppose she's a public figure too. Perhaps she deserves a budget so that she can look good.
I buy that. She deserves a budget.
But this isn't the US. She's not the First Lady.
What you've got to do is all she had to do was declare this. All he had to do was declare it. And what makes me angry is, because maybe it's just me, I don't like beholding to someone. So if somebody suddenly wanted to buy me a lot of clothes, or guys for dinner back in the day, they'd expect something in return. But it's like, why are you accepting these gifts? I mean, what kind of moral compass do you have to just okay, I'm going to get this accommodation for thousands of pounds. My wife's going to get these clothes for thousands of pounds. I don't. It doesn't make me trust him as an individual. Because
well, I think the accommodation was during the election campaign, which, it is an expensive do to stand for election in this country, and it's perfectly normal for political donors to stand those sorts of expenses.
That said, Keir Starmer's a multi-millionaire, isn't he?
He is.
Well, so it is said, but I'm not sure that there's any demonstration that that's a fact. He has a house in London, which itself is probably worth a couple of million, but that's locked up in the property. Yes, he was DPP and therefore earned a professional salary, but he leads an expensive life, as all politicians do. It's not a cheap thing, because public service in this country is really poorly remunerated. If you look at what an MP is paid...
Yeah, but I'm sorry,
well,
he can't whine when he's just removed pensioners' heating.
Oh, no, he's a hypocrite. Look, I'm not defending him. He's a hypocrite, but...
It is a hypocritical thing to do.
But you know what is really poorly remunerated in this country? Working in warehouses like ASOS. That is very...
Yes, but they're not running the country, so it's sort of apples and oranges, really, isn't it?
Not really. I mean,
Well, of course it is. You can't say that the Prime Minister of the G7's fifth biggest economy is in any way comparable in his remuneration to someone packing boxes in a warehouse. It's a facile comparison.
No, well, what I'm saying is that with Lord Ali, who is now buying his clothes, and he's accepting those clothes for, I don't know why, at the same time, there are hundreds of thousands of people in this country who work for these warehouses, and I live in an area that is purposely been zoned as low skill and low paid, and they have very, very dodgy contracts that come in and out.
I don't think you would have
Indeed.
thought of any of that, to be honest. I think it was just the offer of clothing.
That's the optics in the country,
the optics,
isn't it?
I agree with you. The optics don't look good.
That's the optics in the country.
Optics and reality are often at divergence. I don't know about you, I'd rather like the Prime Minister when he's going to meet the President of the United States to look like a serious figure. And if that means that he has to go to Savile Row and have Lord Ali get him a couple of suits,
It can look
it's
like
a price worth
figure,
paying.
But he'd still, I mean, I don't agree with half the stuff he has done in America. I don't think he is working in our interest. So, I mean, I don't think the way he looks, the way he dresses, I don't think that makes any relevance as long as obviously you don't want someone like Michael Foot. I mean, he was
Jeremy
Scruffy.
Corbyn,
yeah, it was bad. But at the same time, we're talking about this gift of clothes for no reason that has not been declared. All you have to do is declare it.
Does it demonstrate a poor political judgment on the part of Starmer to accept this gift for a wardrobe, given, as you said, that he's spoken out about Tory sleaze? Does it tell us that he's got, I don't know, a political blind spot, perhaps?
Well, what you've got to remember is the Conservatives, they've said who they represent. They've always represented, the party of business. The Labour Party have not done that. They have always said they came out of the working class and the trade unions. Now they can't have it both ways. They can't tell the working class of Britain or working people of Britain that they are with them, and then at the same time take gifts of clothing.
Well,
because it doesn't.
But the Labour Party's always done this. Nye Bevan lived in a house in Eaton Square and had a Rolls Royce with a driver provided by Labour donors. It's nothing new for Labour Party politicians to act in a hypocritical manner in relation to personal wealth and remuneration.
But don't you think it was crazy of Starmer to accept a gift of $20,000 for clothes? I mean, how can you spend £20,000 on suits? I can tell you that the Director of Public Prosecutions in 2021 was paid £215,000.
Yeah,
so don't you think that Starmer could stretch to a few of his own clothes?
I'm sure he
Pop into
could.
Marks and Spencer next.
I think your point is correct. I think your point is correct that it shows that he has poor political judgment. And again, I come back to the fact that we are only 2 months into this government, and every week there is a new financial scandal. I think unless Sir Keir finds a way of nixing all of this, that is going to be the lasting perception of his government, that they were dodgy when it came to money.